Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Ennis, and I am excited to spend some time talking about how the concepts in my book can potentially be helpful for you in turning your stress into joy. Now, I'm going to stall for a little bit in these first few seconds until I see that people are on watching, but hopefully, people will get connected and you can hear me okay, and we can kick off this show. This is my first time going live, and I know that I only gave people a little bit of time um, to figure out how it all works. And so, all right, thank you so much, Erica. I'm glad that someone's on. It's so interesting when you try something new, and I know as a coach, I'm always trying to encourage people to take experiments to move forward and learn. And so, this is a little experiment for me. Hopefully, it will go well. Well, I'm optimistic that it's going to go well, and I'll just kind of get us started and kick us off, and hopefully we'll just have a few people kind of join in. So I know that people who are watching, some of you may have known me for a long time, and some of you may have just met me more recently. Um, However long we've been connected, I appreciate you for joining up for this live event where I can share a little bit about how the concepts in my new book, Up Your Optimism Game, can potentially help you to turn your stress into joy. And so, what I want to do, just to give maybe a few more seconds for some other people to come in, if you're joining, I'm curious where you're joining from. I'm over in the East Coast, in Boston, where winter has decided to make a comeback and not release its hold on us yet. And so we had a little scraping of the windshields this morning, but it's sunny and it's a beautiful day. And so, yeah, so feel free to let me know in the comments where you are joining in from. Alrighty, and I know we only have one or two people on right now, so I'll just keep it flowing. It's all good, and I know that this will be recorded and get replayed, and so I'll jump into the content. We'll play a little bit, and all right. I see one comment: Columbus, Ohio, right on. Ohio in the house. Hopefully, spring gets to Ohio soon, just like we're hoping for spring over here in the Northeast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, nice, nice. So, okay, this is beautiful. Now I can start seeing things. I appreciate you. So, sunny and warm Austin, Texas. Yeah, I wish I was there. Southbridge, Mass. Optimistic for spring. That's right. That's right. It's coming. It's coming. The little shoots are starting to kind of pop up. They're ready, and I know we're ready too. All right, well, I'll jump into it and we'll definitely come back to the comments because one of the things is I know that it can be hard to just stare at a screen and listen to someone talk for the whole time. And so there will be some questions and exercises that I'll ask you to participate in just to keep your mind right and also to work your optimism muscles a little bit while we're together. So if you don't know much about me, my name is Charles Ennis, and I'm originally from New Orleans. I grew up as an athlete. I played basketball, I ran track, I played baseball, and I was the captain of my high school bowling team. And before I get any weird comment, bowling is a sport. And when I was a young athlete, I was injured all the time. Every year I played sports, I had some injury. And when I was 15, a physical therapist helped me to get back to basketball. And that's when I decided that's how I want to contribute to the world. And so I left New Orleans to go to physical therapy school at Boston University, and Boston has been my home since. I started working as a physical therapist and personal trainer. And in that early part of my career, I was completely obsessed with anatomy and physiology. I'm a self proclaimed anatomy nerd, and I even dissected cadavers and taught anatomy labs at BU. And like a lot of health professionals, the reason I was so obsessed with anatomy and physiology is I thought the more that I knew about how the body worked, the better I'd be able to advise my patients and clients on what they should do to have better health. But after a short time in the clinic, I quickly realized that personally knowing what someone should do and being able to help someone to be motivated enough to follow through with the plan were two different things. And so my obsession kind of switched from anatomy and phys to coaching, psychology, and motivation, because as you already know, knowledge that's not acted upon is a lot less useful. Back in 2013, I actually got hired as the on-site corporate wellness coach for employees of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. And it was an amazing job. And when I started to coach professionals, I leaned on my fitness and physical therapy knowledge to help them to get healthier. But as more and more people came to me with stress related concerns, I realized that emotional and mental health was just as important as physical health. And thanks to my former coaching at Well Coaches, I grew to develop a passion for positive psychology. And initially, what I'd say is my interest in optimism was in supporting people and being motivated enough to go after their goals. And it's really a simple thing about motivation. If someone does not have hope that they can be successful, they won't even try in the first place. And so, as a coach who was wanting to support people in growing and reaching their goals, I had to figure out how could I help them develop a mindset that was conducive to them feeling like they could do it and having hope. And so that was one of the spots where optimism really kind of excited me in the beginning. And there's a whole chapter. Chapter 3 is called The Anatomy of Motivation, where I talk about how optimism can be useful for motivation for us to change our habits or pursue our goals. Now, on top of being motivated to pursue actions that can lead to growth, optimism, of course, is also important for our mental health. And the more I read from all the positive psychologists, I really became convinced that our ability to cultivate optimism was the most important skill we could develop. And I'll say this about mental health, how I tend to think about it as a coach. I think that mental health kind of revolves around two buckets: cognitive function and positive emotion. And so, from a cognitive function perspective, mental health can consider how well our brain functions. If we think about something like Alzheimer's disease, in Alzheimer's disease, the function of our brain decreases. We lose our memory, our ability to recall, and to do certain cognitive processes. So that's one bucket, is that brain health piece. But then there's the other piece, the positive emotion piece. And I feel a lot of times when people talk about protecting their mental health, what they're really saying is, I want to feel more positive emotions like joy, happiness, peace, or whatever those positive emotions may be. Now, because I'm a physical therapist and a personal trainer, here's the analogy that I use to think about mental health. Just like we have physical muscles, we also have mental muscles. Our physical muscles generate movement, and our mental muscles generate emotions. Our mental muscles are divided into two categories: pessimism muscles, which generate negative emotions, and optimism muscles that generate positive emotions. You need both sets of muscles to move through life. And the strength of pessimism and negativity is that it serves to protect you and keep you safe. Stay back. Don't trust. Don't try. Don't risk. Those are all more negative thinking patterns that are built for survival mode. But if we're overly or automatically pessimistic, we're going to find that it's more difficult to tap into the thinking patterns that help us to grow and feel more positive emotions. And so the premise of the book is really simple. if we want to feel more positive emotions like joy, happiness, and peace, then we have to strengthen the mental muscles, aka optimism muscles, that generate those emotions. All right. I know I said a lot, and I paused, and I don't know if anyone else has kind of popped on in the last little bit. I can see a couple of people are still on. Before I go any further and talk about some concepts from the book, I want to give us a chance to actually work out our optimism muscles a little bit. And so the question that I'll ask for you to potentially enter in the comments is, if you look over the first quarter of 2026, we're in March, we're almost at the end of the first quarter. What went well? Okay. And you don't have to put everything that went well. You can think about something from your career life that went well. You could think about something from your personal life. You could think about something from your social life, anniversaries, birthdays, celebrations, achievements accomplished, whatever it might be. And so I just want you to think about and potentially write one thing in the comments that has gone well so far in 2026. And I'll pause for a little bit to give you a chance to think and write. Yeah, what went well? What is worth celebrating? Obviously, for me, if I go first while you're potentially writing, um, being able to publish my book is something that really went well for me. And I know that many of you have seen me post a lot about it on social media. And it's interesting because I know sometimes I talk about feeling a little overwhelmed by the process. And I know when I first got my books in, I was so exhausted that I could feel my joy being muted a little bit. But then the next day, when I woke up refreshed, I could feel my joy bubbling up a little bit more. Okay, and I see a comment that's come through. Daughter is living with us, and we've navigated the dynamic successfully. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, when it's nice to be able to connect with family, support family, and whenever there's a change like that, it's nice when it goes well. All right, I see another thing. Enjoying public speaking. Yeah, and it's a surprise. You know, this is one of the fascinating things about life is that sometimes we go down a path and we have no idea how much we're going to enjoy it, but we can be surprised at how much we enjoy that thing when we dare to dream and try. Um, I see another comment. Ran my first 2 half marathons. Kudos, kudos. Yeah, I know the training can be hard work, but and you really hit all the targets. Beautiful. Yeah. So physically, sometimes we look back and we can think about what went well. All right, I see another little work celebration. 46 people came to my in-person workshop. Kudos, kudos. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you all for sharing about what went well. And I'll ask a follow-up question. As you reflect back on what went well, what emotion tends to come up for you? So feel free to type that in the chat. As you reflect on what went well, what emotion tends to come up for you? One of the things that I love about being an optimism coach is when I ask people about what went well, I get to celebrate with them. And so it's a reminder for the person, but it's also a little dose of positivity for me. And we all know that our emotions are contagious. And so when we think about, speak about, and share things that are uplifting and positive, not only does it make us feel better, but it can potentially make the people around us feel better. Okay. So again, that follow-up question was, as you reflect on what went well, what emotion comes up for you? And I see that there has been one response so far, relief and gratitude. Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes when we accomplish something that had challenges, when we get to the end point or to a transition point, we can feel a lot of relief when we work through that situation. And of course, when we notice and appreciate things to be grateful for, yeah, that can also happen when we focus on what went well. I'm also seeing pride. Absolutely. I know some of you, of course, have read the book and know some of the contents, but self appreciation is one of our core optimism muscles. And when we focus on what we did well, it can serve to increase our confidence and feeling of pride. And so when we think about what we did well, it can really serve to support our confidence and our pride. Yeah, and I see confidence is a word that comes up for someone else, and yeah, joy and amusement for sure. And so this is the simple and beautiful thing about working out your optimism muscles. What I would say is that positive questions are our weights. And anytime we ask and think about the answer to a positive question, we will strengthen the thinking pattern that leads to those feelings. And so we just asked this one simple question about what went well, and it led to feelings of relief, gratitude, pride, joy, amusement, and confidence. And so, sure, we could ask different questions, and thinking about what's going well doesn't dismiss the fact that there may be challenges or things that aren't going well. And so I always say this about optimism. Optimism isn't about denial, it's more about an intentional focus. And so if we're in the habit of always focusing on the negatives, we can start to train ourselves to look for the positives by practicing asking ourselves positive questions. And even if it's just one positive question a day, what am I grateful for? What went well? What did I do well? What's good in my life? Even that one question can serve to be a launching pad for some positive emotion. All right, so I appreciate everybody for putting that in. All right, so I'll keep going a little bit with these concepts, and then in a little while I'll pause for some Q&A. Um, when I think about the anatomy of emotion, and actually, I'll share this story first, and then I want to talk about the anatomy of emotion. One of the reasons I think so many adults struggle with their mental and emotional health is because in college, they don't really teach us like how to be happy. They teach us how to be good at our jobs. So we come out with our bachelors, our masters, our PhDs, our doctorates, and we're amazing nurses, we're amazing professors, we're amazing engineers, we're amazing corporate professionals. But we still struggle with burnout, depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. And I know personally that even though I have 3 college degrees, there have been so many times in my life when nothing I learned in school was helping me to navigate the emotional ups and downs of life. And some of you know this story about me, but I'll share it again. I remember when 2020 started, I was so optimistic that it was going to be a good year for me. I had just signed up for advanced coach training with well coaches. And I was thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to learn some skills. I'm going to elevate my ability. And it's going to be a launching pad for so much career growth. And of course, in March of 2020, the pandemic hit and everything changed. And of course, initially, a wave of anxiety hit me. I was worried about everybody, my family, my friends, my job, my health, the world. I was just worried all the time, and I had trouble sleeping. And luckily, in my work, I was able to work remotely. And so that calmed me a little bit. And I did my best to do meditation and some breathing exercises. Since it was leading into the summer months, I was trying to get to the beach and get in the ocean. And that helped me with my anxiety a little bit. And then when the fall came, I found out that my position was being eliminated. And that's when a huge wave of depression hit me. I felt lost. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to come next. And of course, it was a pandemic. So I was kind of stuck in the house by myself. And I can laugh about it now because it's in the past. But looking back, I got into this rhythm where I would get up in the morning, eat chocolate, and binge Netflix. Then I'd fall asleep on the sofa, wake up from my nap, eat more chocolate, binge more Netflix. There were days where I know, like, actually, there were probably sometimes where it was 3 to 5 days where I didn't even leave the house. And, yeah, and it was, I didn't really have a lot of hope. And after a couple months, I just happened to be scrolling on YouTube and, I was thinking about meditation and I was trying to learn a little bit about meditation and mental well being. And I came across a video from a yogi that said, "Joy or misery is your choice." And I had kind of heard messages like that before from motivational speakers and coaches. But in that moment, it was like the perfect message for me. And it hit me. It's like, all right, Charles, you don't have to just sit on a couch and wallow all day. You actually can have some agency over how you want to live life. And so I decided that I was going to start coaching myself. And I remember I took out a piece of paper, I started writing down my goals and my action steps. The first thing that I did was I wanted to commit to exercising again. And so, first thing in the morning, I would wake up and I would go for a walk. Like that was just it. I was like, get up and just get out the house, go get some sun. And I found that just exercising helped me with my energy. But at the same time, I knew I needed to also work out my mind. And so I started a gratitude journal. I doubled down on my breathing exercises and my meditation. When I would go for my walks, I would listen to positive affirmations and I would say positive things out loud. And it didn't take long, but I started to feel my joy coming back. And I felt my joy came back because I was intentionally working it out. And even though at that time my life was far from perfect, it was hard. I couldn't see family. I was worried about people still. I didn't have a job. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, full of energy. I'd be walking around the block and I would start smiling randomly when I'd see the dogs or the birds or the trees. It just, I don't know, I felt like my joy was bubbling up, even though my circumstance was imperfect. And I give the credit to how I was thinking and to my mental workouts. And I'll say this, I know that some of us may be in tough seasons right now, and when we're in a tough season, it can be easy to put a lot of emphasis on the season and the situation. And it is true, some of our circumstances are challenging, they're stressful, they're hard, and they can contribute to how we feel. But what I'll also say is that in addition, you also have some power, you also have some control. And when you're ready, if you can find a little support and lean into your power, I'm confident that you can get more joy and peace, even if you're in a tough circumstance. And in my book, Up Your Optimism Game, that was my whole goal, is I wanted to lay out a roadmap for people, regardless of where they were. If they were feeling good, I want to help them feel better. If they were struggling a little bit, I want to help them to find a way to start feeling a little bit more joy and peace. All right, so that's a little bit about me. And I don't know if anyone can identify with that, but there is hope, and yeah, and I'm hoping that my book will offer a roadmap for people to tap into their hope. Okay, I'm going to share one more concept from my book, then I'm going to pause and just kind of see what questions you may have. I mentioned just a second ago that circumstance does contribute to our experience of stress, but we also have power. And I'll just kind of share from, actually, I can make it a little bit bigger. In chapter one is called The Anatomy of Emotion. And what I think is that when we are aware of how emotions are created, then we can use our power to influence our emotions. And so, what I would say is that our emotions are created by the interplay between our mind, body, and behavior. Now, there's a bi-directional relationship between emotions, mind, body, and behavior. Our emotions can affect our mind, body, and behavior, and our mind, body, and behavior can affect our emotions. There's also a relationship between mind, body, and behavior. Mind can affect body and behavior. Body can affect mind and behavior can affect mind and body. So everything's connected, and a positive shift in mind, body, or behavior can get your emotional wheel rolling in a positive direction. Now, you can see at the very top of the document, I mean, I know it's maybe a small graphic, it says environment and situation. And so this is to acknowledge that our environment does influence our emotions. But here's something that I'll say about environment. Our environment influences our mind, body, and behavior. Okay, and so our emotions are always going to be created by our mind, body, and behavior, and our environment and situation will just influence those levers. Another thing I'll say about this environment situation circumstance, Sonia Lubomirsky is a happiness researcher. And in her research, what she found was that 10% of our happiness comes from our circumstances. And again, I'm saying this not to demean or dismiss if you're in a challenging situation, but circumstances and situations only play a small role over our emotions. And I'm guessing that some of you might know people who are in really great situations. They've got lots of money, they've got a big title, a fancy car, a great job, a loving family, but they're still miserable and frustrated. And so we can have lots of things, but still be miserable and frustrated. By the same token, you may know someone who's going through a lot of challenging seasons. They may have a health problem. They may have financial troubles. They may be struggling at work, yet they're still joyful and full of life. And so, again, I don't want to dismiss anyone's situation, but what I want to say is that our circumstances, while they play a role, it doesn't play the largest role in our emotional experience. Although I feel like this is probably the spot where a lot of us get stuck when it comes to dealing with stress, is that we put more emphasis on a situation and we try like mad to change everything around us. And when we try to change everything around us, often it actually adds to our stress, our burnout, and our hopelessness because we don't always have full control of everything that's around us. Okay, so going back to Sonia Lubomirsky's research, 10% from circumstances, 50% from genetics. So we all have a predisposition for how happy we're going to be. But in our research, the thing that I feel is most encouraging as a coach is that 40% of our happiness is tied to voluntary actions like our thoughts and our behaviors. And so we have power and we can influence our emotional state by how we take care of our body, by what we do, and by how we think. And so that's the mind body behavior wheel. In my book, I refer to them as body care strategies, behavioral strategies, and mind care strategies. So, again, if we think about our emotional self care toolkit, you can put body care in the toolkit, you can put behavior care in the toolkit, you can put mind care in the toolkit. Really quickly, I'm going to talk about these things, and I promise I'm gonna pause because I'm curious what is resonating or popping up into your mind. And so, as a physical therapist and trainer, when people came to me and they were stressed, the first place I tended to go was body care. You got to exercise, you got to eat right, you got to get some sleep, you got to get a massage. And that is a wonderful place to start to increase our resilience and increase our experience of stress. Um, and so, some of our joy is going to be in our body. And if we want to feel the most joyful, we're going to have to do some body care activities. The 5 pillars of body care are really straightforward. It's movement, nutrition, sleep, nature, and breathing. And so you can deploy any one of those strategies to improve how you feel emotionally by how you take care of your body. And I'm going to pause here. Um, what is your number one go-to body care strategy? What's the thing that you lean on the most to take care of your body? And again, it was movement, sleep, nutrition, nature, and breathing. So I'm just curious, what's your number one go-to body care activity? If we think about something like movement, when we move, our body secretes serotonin and other feel good hormones. And so sometimes when we're feeling down and our energy is flat, it could be a signal that we need more movement in our lives. And a lot of you know that in many cases, movement can be a really effective way at supporting elevating a depressed mood. All right, so yeah, so what is your number one body care activity? Okay, and I see a comment coming in. A long walk for nature, yeah, and breathing. Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, when we think about the body care strategies, sometimes we can do them all more than one at a time. Moving outside in a beautiful natural environment can just be so good for the body, the mind, the soul. I see another one come through, body scanning. Yeah. Body scanning, I know, is a mindfulness slash meditation technique. And so sometimes by being more present with what's happening in our body, it can support us in feeling better mentally. Absolutely. Absolutely. As a coach, I know initially I wanted people to do everything. And I feel like I know I overwhelmed people in the beginning because I gave them so many suggestions about what they could do to improve an aspect of their health. And what I would say is that if we lean on our top priority, then hopefully that's enough to get the change that we need. So you don't have to worry about doing every type of exercise. You don't have to worry about exercising every day. You don't have to worry about eating perfectly. You don't have to worry about getting 8 hours of sleep and doing everything for your body. You can just look at your life and find the things that you enjoy doing to support yourself, and then work on making sure that you have enough body care so that you feel your best, whatever that best strategy is going to be for you. Yeah, and I see a couple other things coming through. Jogs and golf. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful body care activities that, of course, incorporate some other things to help us to feel good. Yoga and walking among the trees. Yeah, oh man, if we could all just walk and be in nature all the time and do some breathing, the world would be a much more joyful and peaceful place. Beautiful, thanks for that. Okay, so one way that we can improve our joy is through body care strategies. The second thing I want to talk about is behavior strategies. And when I think about behavior, this is going to sound so simple. And I know this is how I wrote it in the book. But when we do things that make us happy, we're more likely to feel happy. And when we don't do things that make us happy, we're less likely to feel happy. I know, really straightforward advice, Charles. Um, for a lot of us, when we become adults, work and caregiving can just naturally pull us away from the things that light us up and the things that give us joy. I know when I was young, I was like a joy seeking magnet. Like I mentioned, I ran track, I played basketball, I was on the bowling team, I also was on the chess team, I learned French, I dabbled in piano, I sang in a gospel choir, I studied abroad in Australia. It was just like there was just so many things that I was doing that just made my life joyful. And of course, when you're in school and you're growing and progressing from year to year to year, that just kind of, makes you feel like, life is meaningful and engaging. And then you get to the part to where you graduate and you start working in the same job over and over and over again. And then a couple years, you pick your head up and you're like, this isn't really what I signed up for. And so, of course, many of us can't quit our jobs and fire our kids and just naturally start playing and having fun. But if we can find a little bit of time to start integrating behaviors that can lift us up, then we can find our joy starting to improve. In my book, I refer to behavior care also as soul care. And so if we want to feel good, we have to do things that feed our soul, just like we have to feed our body. And what I would say is that soul care, aka behavior care, is really there's three pillars to soul care. And the three pillars are connect, play, and serve. And so, from a behavior perspective, if we want to feel more joy, we can do it by playing more, we can do it by connecting more, we can do it by serving more. And again, we don't have to do all three of those things, but those are going to be the main pillars of behavior that will support us in feeling more joy. I know that Chaz wrote going golf, and so if we think about sports that we like, when we play sports that we like, when we play games that we like, when we do our favorite hobbies, whether it's singing, acting, dancing, whatever it is, whenever we're playing and flowing, our joy is going to elevate. And so sometimes we have to take a step back and just say, is there enough play in my life? Am I getting enough flow? And if not, where's an opportunity where I could potentially start to think about how to add in a soul caring behavior? Okay. Um, I'm curious. Actually, I'll ask about this too. What do you feel is one of your top go to play slash flow behaviors? So something that you do, you get lost in it. It's so engaging, and you just absolutely love doing it. So yeah, so I'm curious in the comments, what's some soul caring behavior? And again, it can be from the play category, or it can be from the connection category, or it can be from the service category. I know I said play at first, but I figure we can do all three. Just pick a behavior that you feel really helps to lift your soul and boost your joy. From a play perspective, I am a Boggle nerd and I love the game. I've been playing probably every day for too many years. I don't want to tell you because it's embarrassing. Well, it's not embarrassing, but yeah, a little board games. I grew up in a family that played board games, and so categories, cards, spades, nerds. Like that's our jam, and so I totally love playing board games. All right, I'm seeing some flow activities coming in, singing, playing piano, painting, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. I once ran a wellness challenge at Blue Cross, and I let people pick from any of the dimensions of wellness. And when I mentioned that flow could be useful for stress and emotional well being, there was a mother who came up to me and she said, Charles, initially, my goal was going to be to try to exercise for 10 to 15 minutes a day. But now I actually think I'm going to try to paint every day. And so every day for 21 days, she tried to spend 10 to 15 minutes painting. And at the end, she told me that she finished three paintings. She felt way less stressed. And she even lost 2 pounds, which she wasn't trying to lose. And so it was amazing for her that by connecting with this activity that fed her soul, she felt both physical and emotional benefits. And as a coach, actually, this is something that I felt like is a simple tweak. Most often, we try to get at the body in healthcare through body care strategies. But since everything's connected, sometimes we can get at the body through behavior care strategies. So when we feed the soul, sometimes the body just naturally feels better. And so when we paint, when we sing, when we dance, when we do poetry, when we read, when we write, when we play with our kids, all of those things can, in addition to helping us emotionally and feeding our soul, it can also be a real positive aspect for our bodies. And I've said this to a few of my doctor friends. I'm like, oh man, how amazing would it be if you went into your doctor with high blood pressure and some other health problems, and your doctor looked you in the eye and said, you know what? I'm going to prescribe feeding your soul. I want you to spend a little bit more time each day doing something that brings you joy. I want you to connect with the most important people in your life. And I want you to find a way to contribute and make the world a better place, even if it's something as simple as picking up a can in a park and putting it in the trash. And so, again, it's not to dismiss the body care strategies. I'm a PT, I'm a trainer. I love exercise and diet, but a lot of our emotions are going to be driven by our body. And when we can connect to those soul caring behaviors, so much can change for us physically and mentally. Sweet. All right. I'm gonna pause because I've said a lot, and I want to try to see how Q&A might work here in this live experience. And I also want to thank all of you who've stayed on so long and have participated in the comments. I appreciate you for helping me to experiment with my first time going live. And so I'll wrap it up with this last thing, just going back to the mind. Yes, some of our joy is in our body. Some of our joy is in our behavior. And some of our joy is in our mind. And in my book, I acknowledge body care and behavior care. There's one chapter for the 5 pillars of body care, and there's one chapter for the 3 pillars of behavior care or soul care. But the bulk of the book is devoted to mind care. And I feel like that's the area where most people tend to neglect when it comes to their health, to their mental well-being. Last story about this, and then I know I keep saying last story. I got so many stories. I appreciate y'all for being with me. Um, when I would just focus on body care with people, this is what I noticed. My clients would work out on Saturday. They'd eat really well. They'd go to bed. They'd do all the body care strategies. And then Sunday night, they'd still feel anxious thinking about work. And I was like, oh, shoot. Body care is great when the stress is being driven by the body. But what if the stress is being driven by the mind? Then we need some strategy to address the mind. And so that's where optimism and mind care came in. And so, one simple thought about mind care and stress. Some of us may be in the habit of when something happens, we think about the worst case scenario. And anytime we think about the worst case scenario, that's going to drive us to be anxious, worried, hopeless, afraid, or whatever other emotions come from the worst case scenario. Now, I'm not saying that the worst case scenario is impossible, but we can use a simple mind strategy of decatastrophizing, which is thinking about the best case scenario and thinking about the likely scenario. And by thinking about those other options, it can serve to make the picture less negative. And by having a slightly less negative picture, we will generally feel less anxiety, fear, and frustration. Okay. Last thing on mind care. I know I keep saying last thing, I'm sorry. I get excited about the book and I know I could talk about it forever. Um, your core optimism muscles, your 3 core positive thinking patterns are gratitude, self appreciation, and appreciation of others. And if you get better at looking for the good in life, the good in yourself, and the good in other people, you're going to feel more joy and peace. All right. Now I'm going to pause. All right. So, what questions might you have, or what has resonated most about what I've said so far, or what questions might you have? I know we've got a little bit of time before I close off, and I may not go all the way up to 12 at the very, very end if we get through all our questions and reflections before then. I'll also quick shout out. It's funny. I in my haste I forgot to grab a copy of the book to hold out, but at any rate, the book is available on Amazon in ebook, in print, in paperback, and in hardcover versions. And I'm looking, I'm like, do I have a book close that I can grab and show? I'm going to do this for 2 seconds and I'm going to grab a book just to bring back. But while I go grab a book, feel free to write in the comments your biggest takeaway or a question that you may have about optimism. All righty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I guess I can do this now. I see a question that says, "What do I think my next book will be?" Which is funny because a couple of my writer friends sent me that. So yeah, so there it is. Up your optimism game: how to turn stress, depression, and anxiety into joy, happiness, and peace. Um, as far as the next book, it's weird. Like part of my brain says, "Focus on this one," but I think that as I get feedback about what has been most helpful for people, that might influence what I write next. Initially, like one of the things that I think has resonated with a lot of people is the self appreciation and imposter syndrome parts of the book, because most of us can, or a lot of us can identify with being our own worst critic. And so I could potentially see myself expanding the concepts and just tackling that one thing, how we can use optimism to not be our own worst critics and to live our lives with joy and pride and self love. So yeah, so that I could see that being a potential idea for the next one. What other questions? Yeah, I really appreciate you all for being my the first people to come live. Um, I teach coaching theory for well coaches, and so I've been practicing, talking virtually. And I usually have my slides and I have exercises with everyone. And by the way, shout out to well coaches. My book would not exist without well coaches. And so, for anyone who doesn't know, well coaches is a company that trains and certifies health and well-being coaches. And when they were initially founded, their big thing was health professionals know a lot about physiology, but they don't know a lot about behavior change. And so they were a school dedicated to helping health professionals to get evidence-based coaching skills so they could be more effective at supporting patients and actually enacting the changes that would lead to better health. And so that was my initial attraction as a physical therapist. I was like, I know about how the body works. I just need to learn how to have conversations with people that can be more effective at supporting them and changing their behavior. And I think it was our second lessons when I did it back in 2013 on positive psychology. And just light bulbs went off my head when I was introduced to the concept. And it sent me on this journey of discovery and growth. And so, had I not gone through the Well Coaches Core training and become a coach, I would have never, I don't know if I would have ever found positive psych. And so, I really do have a lot to owe to my experience at Well Coaches. And I'm really grateful for the journey that they have supported me on. Okay, I see another comment. Takeaway: permission to play. Yeah, yeah. Self-conditioned to be productive, to productive activities, and play is actually necessary for lifelong learning. For sure, for sure. It's interesting because I know Erica has been on, and she's one of the people who I think inspired me to play a lot more. Um, I grew up fast. My mom and dad divorced when I was 10, and I was a big brother. And so I had a key to the house and big brother responsibilities. And for a lot of us who grew up fast, our seriousness muscles take hold of the wheel and the fun muscles get put in the back seat. And so it was all about school. I was all about business. I was all about results. I was like, I have to study and be productive and do well so that I can support my family. So I was just so serious. And when I graduated with a bunch of other serious people, I feel like our seriousness is an asset in the academic world, and it's also an asset for our employers because we work like mad to make sure we get the job done and solve problems. But if we're overly serious and our play and fun muscles get weak, then we also feel the emotional toll. And so for everyone out there who's the hard charging productivity type of people, it's an asset to be serious, it's an asset to be productive. It's important for us to grow, but we also need to nourish that playful side of us to make sure that our joy doesn't wither and die. All right, and thank you, Carlos. Yeah. All right. I know that I appreciate you all for being on this long, and I'm not going to keep it any longer. Last little thing before my call out. I hope that this book supports a lot of people in finding a way to start to shift their stress, anxiety, and depression and negative emotions into more positive emotions like joy, happiness, and peace. I plan on doing this a little bit more so that I can be on to talk about the concept, because I believe that the best gift to the world is somebody who is shining and feeling their best emotionally. And if I can do a little bit to help someone else to feel a little bit more joyful and to shine a little bit brighter, then the ripple can spread and the whole world can benefit. And so I appreciate you all for being on with me today. I appreciate your friendship, your support, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you sometime in the future. But until later, be well, and thank you so much for joining me on the live. All right. Take care, everybody.